So guys, the speech of this lady came out like thunder. Nigerians, this one is thunderous. You need to take your time and watch this video. She has released so many information that kept politicians, speechless. I mean, they were just moping at her because she destabilized them.
Prominent politician and his wife climbs up and becomes a Supreme Court justice. We have to regulate these things. And some people will say, how can you regulate love? You're not regulating love, you're regulating sanity and discipline. If your wife needs to be a judge, then you need not be an elected official. You must pick one. Let us get serious. Let us get serious.
This lady spoke and politicians were just dumbfounded. She left them speechless. You need to see her wordings. You need to see the fire in the speech that this lady spoke. She was gentle, but at the same time, she was releasing thunder. You need to hear how she spoke passionately, like a patriotic Nigerian who is ready and willing to see the change we all are yearning for.
The judiciary should not be seen mingling with politicians. Who are the judiciary? They're Nigerians. And I think that's for me, I think that is the root of the problem. Somehow, you become a governor and you're no longer a Nigerian. Somehow you become a judge, you're no longer a Nigerian. You're a president and you're no longer a Nigerian. And that is the root of the problem. It is a Nigerian problem. If you're a corrupt Nigerian and you're made a judge, you will be a corrupt judge. If you're a corrupt Nigerian and you become a SAN, you will become a corrupt SAN. The problem is a Nigerian problem. It starts from the home, it starts from the communities. We don't even hold each other accountable any longer. So, sir, I equally have a question for you. Perhaps we should legislate who people marry. Why should a prominent politician's wife be able to be a judge? It should be against the law. You see somebody that I laugh at it. He's a prominent politician and his wife climbs up and becomes a Supreme Court justice. We have to regulate these things. And some people will say, how can you regulate love? You're not regulating love, you're regulating sanity and discipline. If your wife needs to be a judge, then you need not be an elected official. You must pick one. Let us get serious. Let us get serious. You hear court judgments. And the judge sitting there is the wife of a senator, and the senator comes on the floor of the Senate and tells us, well, in the bedroom, I have negotiated for some of you, and we laugh. So I'm calling on all of us, because I was talking to my friend, Dr. Gash. I was saying to him that the simplistic response to all of our problems is to blame the judiciary. The simplistic solution to all our problems is to blame politicians. If I didn't tell you today that I am a politician, or I was a politician before I went on sabbatical, I don't look like one. I don't speak like one. But let me tell you another problem before I sit down, having listened to our speaker. The bigger problem is, I have to humbly tell you that the politicians you see on your television, in the Senate, the National Assembly, are finished products of a very corrupt route. I remember the first time I was just coming back from the US when I ran for Federal House of Reps. I went to one of the delegates' house, and I must say this with all sense of humility. The man couldn't speak English, was a secondary school dropout, was riddled with poverty. I was trying to understand, how can this man gauge if I'm good enough to represent him? I could barely sit on his seat. The house was filthy. All of you politicians know what I'm talking about. But multiple people like him were responsible to vote for who was going to represent them. And then you wonder what is wrong. With all due respect, it's not lawyers that pick these people. It's not people seated here that choose who is going to represent their parties. Let's get serious. From the root is corrupt. When it's time to pick those delegates, politicians pick basic delegates who cannot barely understand the system. All they know is the brown envelope. And you let them elect your senators and House of Reps members, and what do you expect to get out of it? Let's get serious. When they're writing these delegates, most of them are not even educated. They can't read, they can't write, they don't understand anything. They're waiting for the bags of rice. They don't care about issues. Give me the money. And then finally, because maybe this is not the right time to say all this, but finally, before I sit down, I want to challenge us. Are you waiting for your turn? Because the last election to me was the most sincere. A man who is now, with all due respect, our president, said it is his turn. I felt that was the most sincere statement. Because amongst the political class, amongst the judges, amongst the judiciary, the legislative, all of us are waiting for our turn. Our turn for the embarrassingly reality that we are left to cater to ourselves. The very nature of the Nigerian state is what is creating the electoral rot. Every Nigerian is taking care of themselves. So when you are elected, when you're looking for office, you're looking for a means to take care of yourself. Pay school fees, pay for your electricity, pay for water, pay for the road, pay for everything. Even your security you pay for. So tell me, how can you elect me and expect me, who is coming from my own slice of the national cake, to protect yours? The problem is all of us sitting here and those sitting out there. It may be simple to hold the judiciary responsible, but what I hold them responsible for, with all due respect, is before you became a judge, you were a Nigerian. And sir, because you're the governor we're seeing, you were once a governor, and now you are the chairman of the ruling party. Before all of that, you were a Nigerian. Let's think about Nigeria first. Thank you very much.
First, let me commend my brother, the senior advocate, for a great paper. Noni saying was brilliant. There are so many brilliant people, but there are few sincere and honest people. So I respect and commend you for the truth. Brilliance is cheap, but honesty is expensive. Thank you very much. Let me say this very clear, and I'm going to respond to three key points. First, in every country, elections are one of strategy. So in the US today, you see policy people, strategists thinking around messaging, thinking around mapping constituencies. In Nigeria as well, election is one of strategy. And the strategy of election in Nigeria is very simple. Bribe Inec, bribe judiciary, commandeer the security, and they are done. The people that destroyed 23 election is INEC and judiciary. The rules were clear. The Electoral Act is not perfect, but it was very clear. I'm surprised that any judge who understands administrative law, which I have taught in the university for years, which I studied under the best in the world, would argue that an entire regulation built on a law, an act, a regulation, directing that you will do X, you can choose to do Y, when there is legitimate expectation and detrimental reliance. INEC was totally wrong, and the courts, Supreme Court downwards, got it wrong. When an agency created under the law with an enabling act and the constitution that says you can make rules, makes rules, those rules are law. They can unmake it through rule-making process. If they don't, they are bound to obey it. Results should have been transmitted electronically. I'm ashamed. I have a PhD in law and I can stand anywhere in the world to dispute the best and brightest. I was ashamed that the court affirmed that INEC can just walk away from the law. 5 years I was a regulator of electricity. When we make tariff, it's the same way INEC makes rules. we make those laws tariffs. They are legal instruments. They are binding law. I hold INEC responsible, and I hold the courts responsible for the failure of the elections. Sir, it's important to clarify who can sue. You raise the point. Electoral jurisprudence, the problem with Nigerian elections is that they don't understand electoral jurisprudence. Electoral jurisprudence is that the court's job is to restore back power to the people voting. Democracy is not, the dispute is not between Mr. Amade and Mr. Okutupupa. No. It's about the people's right to elect their leader. Therefore, we shouldn't be saying that only persons who contested and who could have won could file electoral petition. No. Citizens who voted have a right to go to court and say that the process was faulty. Look at the US jurisprudence. All the cases that went to court in 2020, I guess, were mostly by civil society groups and voters. That should change. Now, what does it take to nullify election? I always wonder why judges feel that what they call substantive justice, substantive compliance. If elections were conducted outside the rules, that is enough to nullify the election. You don't have to prove that you would have won. Elections should be nullified if they are conducted contrary to rules. Our jurisprudence is faulty on that. So the question then is, there's a key point somebody mentioned about too much burden on the judges. It is caused by INEC, and I make this clear. The new Electoral Act provides two safeties that we destroyed. First, internal democracy. It says that all candidates must be either elected directly or indirectly. If you choose indirect, then it laid out democratically elected. Let me say it clear. The court has a right and a duty to overrule parties if they present candidates that did not go through the rules of the constitution and their own internal rules. There's no justice like saying, look, there are three people here. Members of the party have a right to due process. That's what the Act provides for it. And that's what the Constitution provides for it. So if you do not second-guess politicians, then it's not that you're imposing the candidate, you are requiring them to follow the rules. And that's what the Supreme Court has been saying before. And the final point I want to make is very clear on this. INEC needs to start doing administrative adjudication. Now, let's be very clear. Every process in an election, including rulemaking, including declaring results, are administrative procedures that require due process. Meaning that INEC should be sitting and making rulings on objections during collection of elections. I watch the drama where INEC says, call result, you call result, after I go to court. No, that's not the way. There is an intermediate procedure before adjudication in court. That is administrative hearing. You must establish the validity of those results through a process that INEC can now make rules, which the court will now review through judicial review. So the critical point is here, and I want to end on this note. The Amechi case you mentioned, sir, interesting case. The court did something that was nice, but look at the failure. The issue is, it's not for the court to impose candidates. Courts can nullify result and ask people to elect, to go back. So we have to redraft timelines to allow for repeat elections, not imposition. And the key point here then is that this is not a matter of nicety. I like the point you made. Politicians are mad dogs. You need to police them. But when the policer of mad dog is himself mad, then that's confusion. The judiciary should no longer be thinking of politicians as people who want to do public good. The public interest is to impose order and regularity in politics, not to allow politicians to self-regulate. That is a lesson of history. I don't blame politicians, I blame judiciary, I blame INEC, because they abandon their work, and politicians are the ones who can never see power and leave power. You have to treat them as persons who have adverse interest to public interest and force through regulation the convergence of private and public interests. Thank you.
Committed to democracy. They've been committed to the acquisition of power and the use of power for self-aggrandizement, but not governance. Governance is about providing for the people. It's about addressing the problems that affect the people. It's about improving lives, livelihoods, and people's welfare. And these are what we have not had. And the tragedy of Nigeria is when you count back from 1999, each regime that comes into power, each government that comes into power is worse than the previous one. Obasanjo, that we criticize so heavily, is now standing upright as the most competent and committed government we have had. The person who succeeded him unfortunately didn't have the health to do much. Then Jonathan came out and he turned out to be much worse. And we were saying with Jonathan, this is the first university graduate that's ruling this country. We will see evidence of that education in the governance. It turned out to be all about corruption. Jonathan left, then Buhari came out, definitely worse than Jonathan. And now, Nigerians are in their hundreds of thousands in the streets saying that the current Tinubu administration is the worst we have seen when you take your index as misery and suffering of the people. How can we sustain a country when each government that comes in is worse than all the previous ones?
That's why I actually asked the question as to whether indeed, is it about the leadership? Is it that we've just not been able to vote for the right leaders? Or is the problem really with us as a people? And it's reflected in, in government. But maybe you'll respond to that after Sulai asked his question. Sulai, you were going to ask. Go ahead.
Well, Nigeria has actually gone through a lot. Banditry, Boko Haram, insecurity, and the corruption you spoke about, the government of Goodluck Jonathan. Perhaps, what are those key factors, if you would, perhaps critical three, that you think that the Tinubu administration should start looking into at the moment that will also, as they fix, give more voice to the people in a democracy?
What we've done in our memo is to give an integrated argument, to say that Nigeria is in deep misery and suffering because insecurity is too high and the economy is not working for the people. Now, why do we have these two problems? Because the level of corruption in government has continued to rise each year. And because corruption is rising, there's no way you can guarantee security for two reasons. One is you can't do procurements that enable the government to do its work because the resources are filtered away. The second thing is that Nigerian citizens are also watching. The picture they see of those in government are people who are stealing the wealth of the nation. And then they ask themselves one question: how come they are able to steal the wealth of the country and we can't? Oh, they have security with guns, we don't. So what have Nigerians been doing? They have been procuring guns. And they have been using these guns against their neighbors, against people they don't know, against the state, against security, against everybody. So it's the demonstration effect. When the leadership does not live up to the expectation of the people, people learn lessons. And lessons can be positive, lessons can be negative. Because the corruption is so high, Nigerians are also learning very terrible lessons of what they will do, which is the ideology of self-help. So our key argument is this. Everybody knows that the center of corruption is in government. And what the leader of government needs to do is to seriously sanction those among his team that have been shown in public to be corrupt. We have had ministers in this particular government, where massive allegations have been released against them, and it's now a year and nothing has happened. This is a signal that this government is not ready to punish those among them who are corrupt. And that's a powerful message. Once the president doesn't come out openly, clearly, without ambiguity, and shows his own team that it's not business as usual, and accountability will count in this government, you mess up with public resources, you go to jail. Right. That's the signal all Nigerians have been waiting for, and that's the signal we are not seeing.
Rather unfortunately, I mean, especially when you put it that way. Now, you narrowed it down to the issues of incompetence and a lack of empathy on the part of, the nation's leadership. I mean, expatiate on that and how it's fundamental to Nigeria's problems.
You see, the question of competence is very basic in good governance, because you need to be able to search for teams, for people who can deliver on the mission you give to them. And the proof of this is when you look at the first tenure of Tinubu as governor of Lagos State and his second tenure as governor of Lagos State. All analysts are agreed that he was very successful in choosing people with proven competence, and precisely because of that, there was a marked increased capacity of the government of Lagos to deliver services to the people. This time around, it is also very clear to all analysts that the calculation in government is that we want a political team that will guarantee we remain in office for a second term, and that competence was definitely not at the center of consideration in the choice of the key players in the current government. And we are now suffering because of that choice, that political decision that has been made. So the question of competence is very clear, but I think the whole question of government is that our constitution is clear. The purpose of government is to provide for the security and welfare of citizens. These are the two things all Nigerian citizens are saying. We are not seeing it. We are not seeing improved security, and we are not seeing improved welfare. Therefore, the verdict is failure. And if you are failing in your key mission, it means there is a critical tipping point that's approaching, and that's why we talk of Nigeria being at the crossroads.
So what does this president need to do? Sorry, Sulaiman.
No, that's fine.
What does this president need to do now to salvage the situation and to bring back the trust of the people back in not just this administration, but maybe going forward? What are the fundamentals that need to be?
I think the first thing that needs to happen is to show a clear commitment to combating corruption within the team itself. Once the president will have the boldness and the insight to do that, people will begin to relax and feel the perspective, the future would be bright because steps are being taken. And if the level of anger and frustration is so high now, is because people are not seeing any steps being taken. Take this example of promises almost on a daily basis about provisions and palliatives made for the poor. Yeah. We live in this society. There's none of us who doesn't know poor people. And you do your survey around those you know. No poor person has ever benefited from any of these things governments talk about. So it is not impressive for government to be saying, we are doing this for the poor, when the poor never ever see what is being claimed.
Do you have a recipe to arrest in that? Because now he has just rejigged the humanitarian affairs ministry. And, Nigeria has a very big youth population, and they've been talking. Now that you have been able to put your finger on some of the key concerns, which is implementation, what do you think that the Tinubu administration should start looking at?
I think the point has to be made very clearly. The government is not unaware of what's happening to the failure of its programs. This food items, cereals and rice that are being offered, the monetary contributions being made for the poor, we all know exactly what has happened to them. When food is being supplied, it's given to state governors, who give it to their local government chairman, who then pass it through the ward chairman of the ruling party in the state. So you know you are handing over this directly to politically powerful individuals who believe that that is their reward for their party being in power. So there isn't even an attempt to say, we have a register of the poor in this country. The register exists, but that register has never been used for allocation. And government can do it because it has the register. We spent 10 years in this country doing a detailed register of the poor. They know who they are, and they know where they are, and they have their telephone numbers. But they never even make the effort to reach them. And I'm saying the onus of proof is on government now, and every Nigerian is looking at them. If the poor don't start to see a change, don't start seeing benefits, then these people are saying, well, we draw a line with government, it's the end of public trust, and now it's everybody for themselves. And when it comes to that stage, then I think it will be a crisis where we move beyond the tipping point.
We hope things don't get to
Absolutely.
that point.
That's why we're having this conversation, and we'd like to thank you for your time, Professor Jibrin Ibrahim. Many thanks for your insights on Newsnight.
So guys, we know that what this lady said in this video is nothing but the reality on ground. I mean, nothing but what Nigerians go through every day, every month, every year. That is exactly what this lady has come out to see. The way the politicians, they've just commercialized leadership in this country. You're a politician, your wife is a judge, your wife is either at the Supreme Court level or appeal court level or even in the lower court. And that is why we've been getting conflicting, judgments and rulings and all that. One judge or one lawyer will say one thing here. At the end of the day, another judge from another angle will still counter what the previous judge said. Because they feel Nigerians don't have sense. They feel Nigerians can be taken for granted. They feel they are in charge. Nobody can question them. And that is why we are experiencing the mess that is on ground today. So take a look at these politicians. It's either they are in this office and their wife is on the Senate floor, or they are in the other office and their wife is a House of Rep member. Or like this lady has rightly pointed out, that some of these politicians, they might be governors, they might be, ministers, they might even be working directly in Aso Rock together with the president. But guess what? His wife or his husband is a judge. Even at the Supreme Court level, how do we expect justice in a country like Nigeria? And that's why she's canvassing that if you chose to become a politician in Nigeria, your wife shouldn't dare be a judge in the same Nigeria. It's either you forgo your political position and allow your wife to take that route of becoming a judge, or you hold your position tight and tell your wife not to near the seat of becoming a judge, so that there will be sanity in all what we are doing. And that is why we saw a senator who came up to say that he influences the decision of his wife. His wife was a judge, now retired, but he influences, he tells his wife who to favor, who not to favor. And even his mates, those of them that were with him on the Senate floor, that the wife has helped many of them in their cases, Nigerians. And this is all why we have people like Akpabio them, you know, who never contested for any election. Lawal them, who never contested for any election. We have them today on the Senate floor. They were not involved in senatorial elections. But today they have that position because our system in terms of judiciary is rotten. I mean, the rule of law does not exist in Nigeria, let alone upholding it. These politicians can be so radical, you know, when it comes to obeying court rulings. They don't care. And that's why they will tell you, go to court if you don't like it. If you are not satisfied, go to court. Because they know they've positioned their people, their relatives, their close people who are very close to them. They've positioned them in the judiciary. And you tell an ordinary Nigerian to go approach the court, justice can never be served in a Nigerian court. And that is where we are today. The few bad hands have ended up damaging the reputation of other judges. It's not as if we don't have judges who mean well for Nigeria, but the desperate ones who are there for commercial purposes, they've just ended up denting the image of those who really wanted to serve this country. And that is what we are seeing today. So guys, you've heard the message of this lady. Even the last speaker, Mr. Amadi, Dr. Amadi to be specific, he talked about how if they bribe INEC, they bribe the judiciary, and they lay hold on the security agents, guess what? They find their way through in terms of election. And that is the rottenness of the system we are operating in. These are some of the things the youths are yearning for this government to come and settle, as in, let there be real changes. But who knows, can that change really happen under the leadership of Bola Tinubu? That is the question every Nigerian should be asking. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Thank you.